All right, so the next section that I'd like to take a look at is the layout of our particular TicTacToe interface. One thing to watch out for is that this is done in XML, and if you have anything that's wrong in your XML, it won't launch correctly. So one thing that you probably want to do is if you're going to be messing with the interface, you could just use the graphical interface and try and figure out how this all works. That is a possibility, but it's probably worth knowing how the XML works. The other thing is to try adding one thing at a time in and making sure that each piece of it is correct. So the basic way that you add things in is similar to HTML. You have your basic Android stuff up here, which you probably don't want to mess with, but then you can add in a similar nested way, things into layouts. So I have one that I've already created that I'm going to be using for reference, and I like the look of this particular one. So what I'm using is a table row. So I'm going to start with a table row, and then I put in a space, and then I put in the particular variables I want to set up. And it's basically, usually it's Android : whatever the variable is, equals, and then the value of the variable is going to be in quotes. You basically do a series of those with spaces. You can put returns in them, and that's no problem. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to put an Android ID in. It's the variable name that you're allowed to access from within Java. So later on, if I want to talk to this table row or get things out of it, I'm going to need to use this particular ID. So this needs to be a unique name that is going to be used in reference for this particular table row. So I'm going to set the Android ID. I'm going to set the Android's layout width to be fill parent. It's going to fill up as much as the parent allows. Layout height has to do with how much of the height I want to use up, and the weight is how heavily to weight this particular thing. Text size, as you would guess, is the particular text size. If you're wondering what these various things are, you can actually look them up in the Android developer site. So for example, if I go look up layout height, which I've done here, this is telling me some of the things that I'm allowed to do with layouts. There's also a tutorial section that talks about, okay, how do you lay things out correctly in Android? So in my particular project, having already typed this out, I'm just going to go ahead and grab it and put it in my main activity. So notice it's got some of these things already. I'm going to go ahead and paste this in and just change the things I need to. So Android ID wasn't in there. Layout width and height is going to be these two things rather than wrap content. Wrap content tries to do as much padding as is contained within the text view. And I want my TicTacToe to take up the whole screen. You can also set up text if you wanted to. I don't really need to for this particular one. I'm going to use those as blanks. I'm actually going to change these things in Java itself. And then, so there's my text view. Here's a particular variable, equals, and then in quotes the thing that's going to be set to, so on. And then this is the close of that particular text view. Oh, I was messing with the text view. That should be table row. Oops, let's go back. This should be in table row. My bad. Text view I don't want to mess with. So notice that for the table row, I'm actually not putting a closing thing. I'm actually going to be putting some things into this table row. When I'm all done with it, I'm going to have that closing tag there. So basically everything that's contained in this table row is going to go between here, where I close it off, and this closing tag for table row. So for example, I'm going to be putting some buttons into my particular project. So much like JButtons, Android has its own button class. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the example one to start with and have as a template. So you put it in much in the same way you put in views. It's kind of like, table row is kind of like your layout, and then you put the particular components in. So here's the ID. Once again, I do the @ means your particular application. It's going to be an ID, and I'm going to call this particular one button 1. So when I want to talk to this particular button, I'm going to have to find this button 1 ID. Here's width and height. To start with, the text is going to be nothing, and here's the layout weight. Notice that it has this close tag right after it, so this button is self-contained. It's not going to have anything inside of it as well. So I'm actually going to do the same sort of thing for the next one down. It's going to be button 2 and button 3. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and see what this looks like. It's giving me a warning about this. Relative layouts don't like that. Ah yes, so one other thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to make this a linear layout rather than a relative layout. So it just puts things in order. So I need to make sure I change linear layout. So I have to make sure I change both of those. Of course, now layout width is an issue, but we'll get to layout width later on. So if I run this guy, what does that do? Look at my emulator, let it launch on there. All right, so I need to make sure that I set the layout correctly. So I'm going to remove these paddings and set the layout to be match parent. And I also want to do Android orientation to be vertical. I believe in all caps? No, all lowercase. So let's launch that guy. So it's still starting it. Takes a little while to launch these things. There we go. Okay, so at the moment we've got our 3 gigantic buttons and our hello world thing up here. Cool. So I would like more than this, obviously. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another table row with buttons in that one. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this table row here, copy it, paste it in. This is going to be, so this was table row 1, table row 2. This will be button 4, 5, and 6. And I'm actually going to add another one in down here. So table row 3 is going to have 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I mean, 8, and 9. Maybe I should have done 0, 1, and 2, but oh well. So let's see if that layout looks good to me. Thank you. All right, so now I have my 3x3 grid of buttons. I can click merrily on them and they do nothing, just like they do in the Swing project. All right. So our layout is basically set up. So now how do we actually do something with the buttons themselves? So I'm going to move over to the actual Java file now. So let's take a look at the actual activity that was created. So it already has a couple pieces of it. So it's got this onCreateOptions menu. I don't think I need to worry about that too much. I'm not going to mess with it though. OnCreate. So this is the default constructor basically of an Android app. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, do whatever activities you're supposed to do, which is the super.onCreate. And then I'm going to set the actual layout of my Android application to be whatever this activity main is that I've been messing with the whole time. So now what I need to do is actually start doing things with code. So to begin with, I need to actually start thinking about how I'm going to do the TicTacToe project. So I'm probably going to need a 2-dimensional array of buttons. So button array, I guess I can call it grid. It's going to be a new button array of 3x3. And this thing is going to be the Android widget button that we're going to be messing with. So just make sure that it actually is that particular one. Okay, so once I have this thing, how do I actually go get all those things out of my XML? Because it's by default, it's not actually part of it. So now I need to worry about something called find by ID. So let me go look at another project that did something like this. So what I have to do is I have to use this, which is an activity, .findViewById, and I give the ID number of a particular thing. So in here, I'm going to say button 0, 0, or I'm sorry, grid 0, 0 equals button is the thing that I'm grabbing, this, which is activity, and it has, this thing has a findViewById command. Go into the resources, into the ID, and go get button 1. And I'm going to assign that this little pointer, the reference here, grid 0, 0 is going to be that thing. So this is now the thing in my layout right here. So this, when I say go get the ID number, I'm referring to this particular thing, which is the variable field. So now I need to go grab the others. So if I do 0, 1, I need to basically do the same thing for button 2, and so on. And that will actually allow me to deal with each of these different buttons. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. So 2 is going to be 3. This is all going to be 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2. It's going to be 4, 5, and 6. And this is going to be 2, 0, 2, 1, and 2, 2. It's going to be 7, 8, and 9. There we go. So now I have an array where I can actually refer to these particular buttons. There's similar sorts of things to what you can do with the J button. You can set text, get text, disable it, all that kind of fun stuff. All right, so this is the wrong import, so I'm going to get rid of that. So now I have all of these various buttons that I can do something with. So for example, let's see if I can actually do something with it. So let's say grid 0, 0 dot set text to be first, and see what that gives me. And go ahead and launch my main activity. Kills the previous project. Let's see if it'll launch the new one. There we go. First. How exciting. Now we're into the Java realm. So now that I'm able to grab each of these buttons and do something with them, I can actually start doing the same sorts of things that I did in my GUI TicTacToe. So create my own methods, do things with these grids, the grid of buttons, and eventually add a listener. So the next thing I need to do is add a listener to this. So there's something called an on-click listener that I can add in. Similar to an action listener. And this is not the dialog interface, this is the Android view. So make sure you're clicking on the right listener. The dialog interface is not going to help you out. And then the thing we're going to add in down at the bottom is an on-click listener. And it does the same sort of thing as an action listener. So the next thing I'm going to do is add in something where I add in a listener and put in the on-click. All right, so this view here is a lot like the source of a click. So it turns out that a button is a child class of a view. So this view that was clicked on is probably a button. So I'm actually going to cast this view as a temporary button. And then I can do something with it. So now I'm going to set click to that. Just like before, I need to be able to also set the listener. So I set the text here. Let's also say grid 0, 0 dot set on click listener this, much in the same way you set an action listener. So let's see if I can click on the 0, 0 button. Save it. Launch that project there. Wait for the emulator to run. Kills the application, launches the new one. Clicked. Awesome. All right. I'm already starting on my way to being able to do stuff. So the next step is going to be figuring out which button was clicked and then having the computer player go.